we live, guys? Yeah? Oh, man, 5 years. 5 years. What is up, everyone? I'm Ejay Cruz, and this is The Parables, your go-to source for wisdom, inspiration, and real conversations to help you become your highest self. And man, like I said, guys, excuse the excitement, but man, it has been 5 years, 5 long years since our last recording. And so if you are new to the podcast, I just want to say welcome to the platform, to the show. And I'm so grateful that you are here. And if you are a returning listener or watcher, depending if you're watching on your favorite video platform, man, I just want to say welcome back and actually apologize to you for taking so long. But man, I'm just so excited. It's been a long time coming. God's timing is always perfect. And man, we are officially back. And so what I want to do today, guys, is just really get right into it. And, for those that are new to the podcast, just give you a little, backstory on how the podcast was born, like the inception of it. And for many of you who are returning listeners and subscribers, you may know this story, but, the podcast, The Parables, has been a passion project of mine, right? It's been a passion project of mine. And if we go back all the way to 2010, for those who don't know my story, I'm actually a registered nurse since 2010, right? And I actually had a pretty good career, 12-year tenure in that profession. And in the culture standards and society standards, right? Being a registered nurse and accomplishing that at age 23, making six figures, that's good, right? That's good. I was brainwashed into thinking like, hey, EJ, you made it, right? You're making good money, right? You're making good money. You're in an industry that it will never go away. And life was good, very, very blessed. And I got to tell you, I felt really a void, right? I felt like something was definitely missing in regards to, what my next chapter was, what that next season looked like. If this is something that I want to continue to do for the rest of my life. And so, going into about the 6th and 7th year into my nursing career, I started to question on what that next chapter and what that next season looked like. But if there's something I did know for sure, it was this. It was that I knew that if I stayed idle, right? If I stayed idle and I wasn't proactive in seeking what potentially that next opportunity was for me and just waiting for it to come to me, I knew that I would never move. I knew that it would go nowhere. And so 6 to 7 years into my nursing career, about 2016, 2017 is when I would say really my self-mastery, my personal development, self-development journey began. And that journey has definitely been quite the ride, I'd say. And so back then, when I knew and I was seeking what that was, I was doing everything I could to just see what else was out there aside from the sphere that I was so accustomed to, right? I was attending workshops, going to seminars, networking. I mean, any summit, workshop, seminar that was being hosted, I was probably there. I was putting myself out there, reading books, listening to podcasts such as this one. And it was not until I actually stumbled across a gentleman by the name of Andy Frisella. And if you guys follow me, you guys probably know who Andy Frisella is, a very successful gentleman who has a massive influence. And that brought me to his group, his community, his entrepreneurial community called Arte Syndicate, which led me to also meet the co-founder, and that's Ed Milet. And truthfully, I didn't know what this group was really about. It was a community of entrepreneurs, starting from those who didn't really have a business just yet, all the way to those who are multimillionaires, had a business for 10 plus years. And, it was the first time that I actually paid a fee to be a part of a community. And so I joined that group, and I got to tell you, that group, that entrepreneurship group called the Arte Syndicate, really did change my life. I've met some of the most remarkable and incredible people in that group till this day I consider brothers and sisters. And, during that time, what I thought my business was I actually thought I was going to get into clothing, to be honest. But, as I continued to be engaged with the community members, right, go to the events, I did something so simple when I look back at it. And that simple thing was this, is I literally took a notepad, a yellow college ruled notepad, and just wrote down on the left side what I love to do, what I enjoy doing, or I guess you could say maybe what I'm good at, right? And those two things that I wrote down, and I actually think I still have that notepad, actually, but the two things I wrote down on that notepad was one, that I love to meet new people. I just love meeting new people, guys. And the second is I love having meaningful conversations, especially if it's with the right person. And I kid you not, I looked at those two things and I asked myself, dude, EJ, what can you do with those two things and turn that into something? Maybe even a business. Okay. And after a lot of brainstorming, a lot of, sleepless nights, I finally came to the decision of starting a podcast. Okay. Now, mind you, I'm in this beautiful studio, like right now as we speak, doing this episode, but this is a guy that's coming from the nursing healthcare field, right? So what I'm trying to say is I had no idea how to operate and function a podcast. Everything, guys, and I mean everything, was self-taught. In fact, many times when I have lots of people reach out to me and ask me about the podcast and, about equipment and gadgets and, things like that, I always say the same thing, surprisingly, and that's this. It's that I only know how to do two things: hit record and hit stop, right? Hit record and hit stop, and that's it. Everything else was self-taught. And in reality is I actually did everything, from the shooting to the editing to inviting guests to publishing, you name it, I did everything. Okay. And that's how the podcast was born. And really, what initially began as just wanting to have meaningful conversations with some amazing people, which kind of started off with friends and then, community leaders, entrepreneurs, people doing like phenomenal things, right, in the world, making impact and, things like that, good influence. The podcast, just to give you some context, blew up. Between 2018, guys, and 2020, the Parables grew massively with downloads, with watches on YouTube. It reached countries. Once I started reading the analytics and data, it reached countries I've never heard of. I had lots of people sending me messages in regards to how this one episode changed their life, or how this conversation and episode, whatever it was, changed their perspective, helped them become a better person. And the podcast just initially blew up more than I ever imagined. And this is kind of where I came to realization, like, wow, like this is my passion, right? The parables is my passion. And by the way, I'm so big on names. I always get this question, how did you come up with the parables? The parables is such a cool and dope name. Well, to me, when it comes to branding and marketing, everything comes down to the name, in my opinion. And so after I really started to think in regards to what's actually happening during an episode or a recording, it's that a message is actually being conveyed, right? A message is being conveyed. And so literally what I did again, going back to my, right? Because I don't know what the heck I'm doing, is I went online, I looked at some synonyms, and there you go. The parables was just right there. Almost like when Ray Kroc first laid his eyes on the name McDonald's, he knew it was the one. It was the same thing when I came across the name, the parables. So much that the parables is even trademarked and owned by me, right? And so that's how the inception of the parables really came about. Just it blew up between 2018 to 2020. 84 episodes, all done by myself. And it's been a journey. It's been amazing. And like I said at the beginning, it is so good to be back. I'm almost just lost of words that we're finally here, that I'm looking at this camera, speaking to this mic, and that we're back. And by the way, one thing I do want to mention is that, you know, this podcast was really born and created out of the pure joy, like I said, with meeting new people, right? Having meaningful conversations, with others, and just a platform for my content to become timeless. You know, something that anyone can listen to, including my kids and their kids can listen to and just have access to, and hoping to impact and influence their lives in a positive way. And so I say that just because, so you know the direction and just, you know, the what the podcast is about is I didn't start this podcast just to start it. And what I mean by that is this, is that many times most podcasters, they do podcasts just to do it because they know it helps elevate their personal brand. They know it brings in more business. They know it's a great way to network. And so I didn't do it just to do it. I started this podcast with the pure love of, again, meeting new people, conversations, and just now knowing the impact and what the platform can do to change people's lives. So shots fired to all you other people starting podcasts. I'm totally kidding. But what I want to really convey is that having a podcast and what it's capable of doing, right, to me is an obligation and a responsibility. It really is. And so, and random fact, by the way, for those who don't know, is the average lifespan of a newly started podcast is actually 7 episodes. Seven episodes. Okay. In season 1, we did 84 episodes. Still don't know how the heck we did that, but we did it, right? We did it. And so they call that actually pod fade, right? Pod fade. And the reason for that is because once creators begin to realize the amount of work, consistency, and effort and time it takes to actually operate a podcast, this is where, again, they slowly begin to fade and eventually stop doing it. But we're in here, the Parables is in here for the long haul. And so again, just know that the podcast is back, and just know that it's done out of the pure love for spreading a positive influence. And so why did I stop? I think is a question that I get a lot. Why did I stop back in 2020? Well, this is actually the first time that I'm going to be sharing this story publicly. Those who are close to me know this story. But back in 2020, towards the fall and winter, the craziest day of my life happened exactly on December 23rd of 2020. My wife was pregnant with my firstborn, Gigi. And many of you know something called the pandemic happened. COVID was here. And so as we were getting ready for my wife's due date for my daughter, we decided that day, December 23rd, that we would get the house cleaned, like just a full cleanup of the house. So that way, when my daughter arrived, she could come back to a clean and sanitized home, I guess you could say. And early that morning, I get a phone call. I get a phone call from a good friend of mine. His name is Miguel Aguilar, who actually, by the way, just tragically passed away this past December of 2024. But I get a good call from my friend Miguel Aguilar, and he informs me that my other good friend, Sam Bakhtiar, had passed away. And Sam Bakhtiar, if you guys are not familiar with him, a great man, great family man, successful business owner. In fact, if you do have time, I highly recommend you go back to episode 15 to listen or watch his episode. But Sam Bakhtiar to me was a brother. He was a mentor. And everyone that got in contact with him became a better person. This was a guy that took me in, that believed in me, that helped me in so many ways that I could just get even put into words. And he was a good friend of mine. We worked out together 4 a.m., almost 5 days a week with a bunch of my other weightlifting buddies. Shout out to them. And we all got COVID. The worst of the group was me and Sam. And unfortunately, he went and got admitted to the hospital. And I still remember the text message that I got from him. Right? I reached out to him just to make sure he was okay. Like, hey, I heard you went into the hospital. And that morning, again, December 23rd, Miguel calls me and tells me that Sam had passed away. And it's one of those things. Have you ever, I'm sure many of us have experienced or heard of a death. And it's one of those things where you just don't feel as real yet because the news is a little shocking at the time. And mind you, again, I had people over cleaning the house. He tells me, and after I immediately contact my other friend, Ed Milet. And immediately after I text him, Ed calls me. And again, no one knows this story, but I do think it's important. And he asks me, are you sure? Right? Because Ed and the industry that he's in, they've serviced Sam's family. And eventually, me, Miguel, and Ed got on a 3-way call. It was confirmed. And he passed away. And, shocking. The rest of the day went by. The cleaners eventually left. And finally, I jumped into bed. I think it was like maybe 10 or 11 o'clock at night. And I finally let it all out. My emotions, it started to really soak in of what really happened. And you're not going to believe what happened next. My wife's water breaks. We're going to have a kid. True story. The craziest day of my life. One of my best friends passes away, and my daughter's about to be born. Again, this was during COVID. So we rushed to the hospital. We're there. Next day, December 24th, my beautiful daughter, Gigi, was born. And since then, lots of things have happened, but it was up until really that point that the podcast had gone to a halt. It's, we put a pause on it. And so that's the craziest day of my life. That's probably the first time I've publicly shared that that story. And, just rest in peace, Sam. Rest in peace, Miguel. I'll be talking about Miguel in a future episode. But I miss you guys. And yeah. But what I've been up to this past 5 years, it's been 5 years since the last episode 84. What I've been up to, well, aside from raising a daughter, I've also welcomed a son named Levi. I've been actually in the trenches of entrepreneurship, started a business, started investing, and just, again, the continued journey of self-mastery, just focusing on myself, becoming better, supporting my family, getting closer to my faith, being a part of planning a church in Eastville, which I have a future episode of that coming up very soon with Pastor Aaron. Can't wait for that. And really, if I could describe it, just life. 5 years have just gone by of just life. And so, one of the questions I always get is, well, EJ, like, when are you going to come back? Like, why are you back? I think is a question I want to answer. Well, one of the answers is I actually got sick and tired of a lot of you asking me when the Parables is going to come back. And I mean that in a good way. It held me accountable. Because every time I got asked that question, it was always the same answer. It's coming. It's coming. Guys, it's coming. Don't worry. Right? But why am I back, and why now of all times? Well, it's funny how history repeats itself, because back then in 2018 to 2020, what initially started as just trying something new became something a whole lot bigger than I could ever imagine. And now, as we quote unquote start season 2, I feel like history is repeating itself. Meaning that I've come to realize that the Parables is not just my passion project, but it's also my assignment. It's my assignment. It's my modern day ministry. And it's not just to film content. It's actually, in my eyes, to steward positive influence. Positive influence. And so that's why I'm back. And I got to tell you, this is going to put season 1 to shame. Season 1 to shame, guys. And I'm so excited. Again, if you are here, you're new. Oh, man. If you're a returning listener and subscriber, you just have no idea what's in store. I'm so excited. And, there is one thing I do want to just bring up. And maybe this individual's listening. There's a local food hall in my city. And not too long ago, me and my family were at that food hall, and someone came up to me, a random stranger, and he came up to me and he didn't say, EJ, or I know you, or how's it going? He actually said, Parables podcast, right? And so what might seem so simple, and if this individual's listening to this, I just want to say thank you. Because for whatever reason, when you came up to me and said Parables podcast, and of course the same question I always get, when is it done? When are you going to relaunch it? Is it coming back? It was just such a good reminder at that time. Again, timing's everything. Of why it's so impactful and why I need to be back. I always knew I'd come back. I just didn't know when. And so to that gentleman, again, I forgot your name. I apologize, but I want to thank you for having the courage to come up to me, because you have no idea, that was very impactful at the time in regards to just solidifying and putting a stamp like, EJ, it's time, right? And so just know that this isn't my first rodeo, but I also feel like I'm embarking on a new journey as if I am brand new, right? As if this is a brand new journey, a brand new season for me. And so it's very exciting. And, for those of you that are new, here's what you could expect and how you could get the most out of listening to the parables. Every episode, I could tell you with the utmost confidence, you will leave a better person. You will find wisdom in every episode. And all the conversations that you hear will not only provide you inspiration, wisdom, but it will be full of good energy, fun, high, vibrant, just good energy. And let me tell you something. You can find wisdom. Listen to me when I say this, guys and gals. You could find wisdom in every episode, even if it does not relate to you. So let me give you an example. If maybe we are talking about fatherhood and maybe you're not even a parent just yet, I can promise you that you could find some wisdom in that conversation that you could apply to your life. If what we're discussing is maybe about business and you don't have a business yet, again, you could apply some of that wisdom probably in your day-to-day or maybe your family's relationship. I promise you, when you look at it from a different lens and perspective, you will find wisdom. And what I've come to learn is that there are lessons and hidden messages and nuggets in conversations and content that could really just change your life. You just have to look for it and think a little bit outside of the box, okay? And so, in fact, just as something to share, is I know people who spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to attend workshops, to attend seminars, to attend coaching programs, just so they could go there and all they need is that one nugget to completely change and, that mind shift that they're looking for, and that's all they need. Okay? So I promise you with the utmost confidence that you will find massive value and a lot of wisdom and have a lot of fun in each episode. Okay? But one thing I will say, and I'm going to encourage you to do, is that to be consistent. You have to be consistent and proactive in tuning in to the parables, or let alone this type of content. And even if it's not the parables all the time, that's okay. But like I said, I have the utmost confidence that you will leave listening to an episode or watching an episode a better person with much more wisdom. All right. And trust me, time is the most valuable commodity. So I could assure you, you will not ever waste your time listening to one of our episodes. All right. So how to be consistent as I almost wrap up here is this. Subscribe and follow the podcast, whether you're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, if you're on YouTube, so you could get the latest updates and notifications on episode drops. You can also subscribe to my newsletter, which will be in the description. So that way you are up to speed on any announcements and any drops. You could also follow me on social media as well. But that's how to stay consistent with the parables. Last couple things I want to mention is that, like I said, season 1, 84 episodes, I did everything on my own, right? And to give credit, there were a few episodes I outsourced, things like that, okay, to give credit there. But for the most part, I would say 98% of the time, I did everything. And it's funny because when I was shopping around for podcast services, because I told myself this time around, I'm just going to be Ejay Cruz, the host, and not have to worry about everything else. Because I want to really make sure the content is what we really focus on. And when I was shopping around and reached out to a couple friends of mine who have agencies that do this stuff, surprisingly, just didn't get a response or didn't follow up with me. And that led me to an amazing studio here in Chino, California called California Talk Studio, which will also be in the description. And I gotta tell you, this team is amazing, guys. The level of production between this and last season, I'm sure you guys could see it, probably even hear it. Shout out to the team, Bernard, to Rally, to Corey. I personally still feel these guys have no idea who they're dealing with. They're probably like, man, we're going to fire this guy because he's too crazy. But I am so thankful for these gentlemen. And I truly do believe that God brought me to them. I really do, because it's a match made in heaven. And so quick little shout out, if you're ever in Chino, California, and you ever need any content, any podcast, studio recording, they do everything. Just don't take time away from me. That's all I'll say. I'm kidding, guys. Okay. But shout out to California Talk Studio. And last thing, I just want to say a quick thank you. A quick thank you to God, first and foremost, to my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. I also want to say thank you to everyone that has supported me throughout my entrepreneurial journey, especially the Parables podcast. What I've learned is that you get the most support from the most unexpected people. And it's not to say that I didn't get support from friends and family, but I got to tell you, a majority of the support, especially with this passion project, my assignment with the Parables, has been through so many strangers. And I'm so grateful because the podcast would not be anything without you. I also want to give a quick shout out and say thank you to Andy Frisella, to Ed Milet, to Sam Bakhtiar and Miguel Aguilar, rest in peace, to my close friends, to those who have always supported me, to my buddies, my accountability partners. You know who you are, especially when it came to the podcast. Names that come top of mind, Twins, John Mall, Zach Smith, just Andrew Cruz. There's just so many people. Don't get offended if I didn't say your name. Come on now. You know I love y'all. Those are just some people that come top of mind. Obviously, the guys here at CTS, California Talk Studio, definitely want to give a special thank you to the woman of my life, Ejay Cruz, my wife, who has just supported me with everything, every crazy little idea that I continue to put on the table. But she knows that the Parables is it's something special. It's our assignment on earth here. And so shout out to my wife. Thank you for everything you do. I love you. And I would not be the man I am today without you. And last but not least, most importantly, and I wrote this down because I want to get this message across. My last thank you is, success used to mean something completely different to me. If you were to ask me 5 years ago what success meant to me, it would probably be about building wealth, achieving status, stacking accomplishments. But I'm not the man I was back then, and neither are you, right? But I'm not the man I was back then. And today, success looks a lot different. It's no longer about what I accumulate, but actually what I create. And so if you were to ask me now what success means, I'd point to my children. My definition of success is reflected on how I raise them, who they become, and how they treat others. And the way they light up a room, not by what they have, but who they are. And so if they grow up to be kind, to be grounded, and courageous enough to build their own lighthouse, to be a beacon of light to the world, to lead, to love, to impact others, then I've done my job. That's real success to me. I'll accept the trophy at that point. And so with that, guys, I appreciate all of you. Thank you for tuning in. Again, we are back. Bernard, Raleigh, Corey, we are back. If you enjoyed your time with us and found value in this episode, please do me a favor and pay it forward. What I mean by that is that if you found value and you know this episode can impact someone, please do me a favor, pay it forward and share it with them. It also would mean the world to me if you haven't already to please subscribe or follow the podcast so you're always up to date with the latest episode drops. I appreciate you, and we'll see you on the next one. Blessings. We are back, baby. Let's go.